try and sort of follow stories through, actually, and this is a story we've sort of told you a good few months back. It might even be further back than that, actually, but after 3 years of fighting, Andrew Brown, who's from Worcester, finally received a copy of an ultrasound scan. This was asked for from Worcestershire Acute Hospital's NHS Trust. You might recall us telling you the story. Andrew wanted the scan because it was around 10 years old, and obviously compared to more recent scans, the Trust told him that actually that information is now on obsolete technology. At one stage, he was actually labelled a nuisance complainer by the Trust. They later then withdrew that allegation before a row broke out about who should foot the bill, which was about £2,000 to actually retrieve this information. Now, the Trust have retrieved the scan. They've given it to Mr. Brown, along with some compensation for 3 years he spent waiting. And that compensation?
£10.
£10. Let's get some reaction from Andrew sitting in the studio with us. I think worth just explaining why you wanted this scan, first of all, before we get your reaction about the tenner, Andrew. So what was the need for the scan?
OK, to get the actual copy of the scan, well, I'd had an ultrasound scan in 2011, and I wanted to compare it with the scan that I'd had in 2004. And I applied for that in around about July or August of 2011, and in a fairly short period of time, they told me it wasn't possible to provide it to me because the technology had changed and they weren't able to extract that scan or get it for me. So that's how it all began, really. So
this 3 years journey to get the information that is yours. I mean, at the end of the day, any medical records like that, they're yours. You should be able to get hold of this stuff. You've been given £10 in compensation. What's your reaction to that?
Well, because there'd been such a lot of aggravation over that period of 3 years, as you mentioned, I'd been made vexatious status at one point during that, and they also removed me from cardiology in December, I think, of 2011. So around about that time. So all these things were happening all at once. So my follow-up cardiology appointment was lost in February. So because I'd been discharged from cardiology, they wouldn't see me again in Worcester. That was put right about 18 months later. They said actually they would see me if I needed to be seen. So that's the kind of history of it. So there's been a lot of aggravation, and I believe that the Trust have offered me this £10 simply because they're annoyed with me for having put them to such pressure over a period of 3 years.
But what figure do you put on what you've been through?
Well, it's very difficult to put a figure on something like that. What I do know is that I was removed from cardiology, I was made vexatious status, and I haven't been able to get my scan up until very recently. I went to see a private consultant in London because I was so anxious about my cardiac health. That cost me £200 because I had actually been discharged from Worcester and made a vexatious patient.
Andrew, the hospital said the scans were stored on obsolete technology. The Trust paid for the equipment and training for staff to retrieve these images. They say that Mr. Brown has been unable to provide us with evidence of further financial losses suffered as a result of the delay in receiving the images. If he provides this, we will reconsider his request for further compensation.
Well, it would be good if they do.
Well, if you got a receipt from the consultant's appointment, you can say, look, I spent this amount of money.
Yeah, of course I can do that. But also, just the fact that something that should have been clinically available, not just to me, but to anybody else, and to their own consultants if they ever needed it, scans that were not retrievable, they say that 270,000 patient records may have been affected by this archiving failure. So really, the trouble I was put to wasn't... It should never have happened. These things should have been on the tips of their fingers all along.
Well, it's the old argument about is it the money or is it the principle here? I mean, do you actually sort of lessen your argument in some way, Andrew, by saying that I'm in it for the money?
Oh, I'm not in it for the money. I've actually been put to a great deal of trouble. I've had to do a lot of research. I've had to write a lot of letters, and it's been a very anxiety-provoking episode to have actually to have been treated in the way that I have been.
But you don't think it sort of lessens your argument, the fact that you're now sort of banging the table, and we know how cashed up the NHS is, and you say, come on, I want some money.
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean, it's just the reality of healthcare that sometimes people have a valid claim for compensation or for whatever they're asking for. It's one of those things. I think it's really regrettable. We've got a situation whereby if you actually pursue a complaint with the NHS or you want compensation, it's almost seen as you have a lack of gratitude for the kind of world-class healthcare system that we've got. And I certainly haven't got a lack of gratitude, but I do think that they failed in their archiving and they should have been able to provide me with what I wanted much sooner.
Andrew, appreciate your time coming in this morning. Thank you. Andrew Brown, who's been offered £10 in compensation, as you heard the story there, spent 3 years trying to get access to medical records from Worcestershire Acute NHS Trust. 8:46.